Good morning, everybody. This is Tommy Elliott and Matt Joya here with the one and only Clark Gracie for thefightsite.com. Clark probably doesn't need too much of an introduction for our audience, but for those of you who don't know who he is the most photogenic man in jiu-jitsu, 2013 IBJJF Pan American Championships winner, World No-gi Championship winner in 2018, and one of the foremost experts in the world on the Omoplata, which is one of my favorite submissions, and I think one of Matt's too. So with no further ado, let's just jump in. So how are you this morning, Clark?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Happy to be here. So what have you been up to lately? It's been a while since I've seen you on the competition circuit. Are you still an active competitor, or is that something you've really put in the past to focus more on your school?
No, I'm still competing. Competed last year. This year I haven't competed yet. You know, I was considering doing Pan Ams, but because this situation happened, you know, it took us, you know, it didn't even happen. So
sure,
just waiting. But yeah, last year I did. The last competition I did was actually the Asian Open.
Okay.
Yeah, I did some IBJJFs last year, and still open to do it, but just not as probably aggressively hunting the competitions like I was when I first got my black belt. But yeah, I think I did like 4 competitions last year.
Are you so in terms of competing, are you focused mostly going forward on remaining in tournaments, or are you interested in getting more involved in the super fight and professional scene that's out there right now? Because I imagine a lot of people would love to see you in like Fight to Win Pro, for example.
Yeah, I fought in a handful of super fights. Usually I get invited to like 1 or 2 a year. Mm-hmm. Last year I was supposed to fight Lucas Leitch in something called the BJJ World Festival.
Okay.
In Los Angeles, and the fight, and he ended up getting injured, so they canceled.
Oh, that's too bad.
The fight, but I ended up commentating that event, so it was pretty fun. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, I've done some Metamorphoses. I've done.
Yeah, I remember that.
What else have I done? I've been talking about doing a Fight to Win, but just haven't made it happen yet. And,
what are your thoughts on? What are your thoughts on kind of the transition to that super fight model for a lot of the top guys? I mean, do you think that's a positive development? Do you think it weakens the tournament scene? Like, what do you think about that?
No, I think it's amazing. You know, like you get 2 tough competitors. It's promoting the sport in a good way because the competitors are making some good money. You look at like events like UFC or, you know, boxing or whatever. They're promoting one guy against another guy. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about that for a competitor too is, you know, for myself, let's say I would get to study my opponent and really understand his game and create a strategy and game plan. So that's pretty cool. And that's something that you can't always do in a tournament where there's, you know, 50 guys, you're not sure who you're going to fight.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a waste of time to prepare for everybody. So just do your best. I just usually put myself in the mindset that I'm going to impose my game and have a good strategy for myself. Other than that, I like to know, like, okay, this next guy I'm going to fight, what does he like to do? Mm-hmm. And, you know, just kind of be aware of that. But I think it's great that how everything is heading with the super fight scene, all these events. Some events are more successful than others, come and go. But, no, it's great. I think advancement for the sport and reward for these high-level athletes that are dedicating their lives to the sport and mm-hmm. finally getting, like, a little bit better pay now. So I think it's awesome. I think it's fun.
Yeah, it really is nice as a competitor. You know, we've all spent hours and hours standing around on cement floors at the Pyramid, and I know when the couple times that I've done Fight to Win Pro, you know, you just show up an hour before you have to compete, warm up, and then it's 10 minutes and you're done under the lights, and it's really fun. So I certainly like it as a competitor, and getting paid doesn't suck either. And I think, you know, you're a person that I would think there'd be a lot of demand for, both because, you know, you're very well known in the community, and also because you have such a submission-oriented style, which is one thing that I've always really enjoyed watching about your game. I'm just curious, do you think that being so submission-oriented in your game has ever hurt you from like an IBJJF standpoint, you know, from within the points competition? Obviously been very successful in those competitions, but sometimes it's better to focus more on points if you just want to win the tournaments. Do you have any thoughts on that in regards to your own style?
Definitely. A lot of times when you go for a submission, you open up the position, the control that you have. You kind of give up a little bit. Let's say you're in the mount and you go for an armbar. You're giving up the mount, right? One time I remember I was on top, feeling pretty good on top. I was fighting at Worlds against Vitor Estima, and I think it was like 2014 or something. And I went for a knee bar from the top, and he came to the top. I lost the control of the knee bar. In that kind of situation, he gets 2 points, and I get maybe an advantage. But yeah, it's dangerous because you give up position, and a lot of times giving up that position doesn't just lose you the control, but gives your opponent points. I've won a few fights just because the guy in my guard went for a footlock, and then I just came up to the top, and it was like, thanks for the free 2 points, And I've seen that happen countless times. And,
yeah.
And it's usually something people do when they're desperate for that win, but you shouldn't do it when you're winning, I think, or when you're just confident about what you're doing.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just act with like instinct or desperation, or just you act without thinking enough, and yeah, you give up points for that type of rule set, which is nice when it's submission only, right? You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, it's very freeing. So, speaking of submissions, the one you're best known for is, of course, the Omoplata. I'm just curious how you came to settle on the Omoplata as a centerpiece of your game. If that was intentional, or if something that you just started doing it and realized how versatile it was, and how much success you were having with it. What was the origin of the Omoplata for you?
I mean, I think there's a couple different type of guards that I like to play that worked really well with the entry. And then there was a time that drilling became kind of popular, maybe, I don't know, almost 10 years ago or so now, where it's like just drill. And not that I was the biggest fan of that, but that's something that I was like, okay, what am I going to drill? I'll just drill that position that, these sweeps that I like to do, or this type of guard. And it connected really well with Omoplata. Then I started just finding myself in Omoplata more and more, and I found it to be a really fun position where I could become creative in ways to find different submissions, even within the Omoplata, different ways to move my partner, control. And then I started making it a point to always go to Omoplata. Like every once in a while, I would say, like, I'm just going to Omoplata this guy over and over and over again until he just can't stand it anymore, And I started hearing people say more and more, they're like, I can get the Omoplata, but I don't really finish it very often. And, that kind of set me apart in a way, because I usually could find the submission. And it caused people to like ask me a lot of questions about it. Like, hey, how did you get that finish? How was that? That was really cool. And then I started thinking it was cool too. So I just kind of kept studying it, kept understanding it a little bit deeper, and it just goes from there,
Yeah. And sorry.
Go ahead, Matt.
So you were talking about how people usually don't finish the Omoplata. Do you think it's because they don't use the Omoplata crucifix? I think you have about 7 or 8 submissions at the black belt level from that position. When did you start to implement the Omoplata crucifix into your game? Was that just a thing that came natural, or was that something you had to really work on?
Yeah, it's one of my best submissions, actually. Probably one of the ones I've used the most in competition. But it's something that I remember thinking about clock choke when I'm on top, internal position. And then if you think about clock choke combined with Omoplata when you're finishing it, especially against someone who's very flexible, they're not wanting to tap. And then you kind of feel bad, like, man, I'm cranking on this guy's shoulder when he's going to tap or he's going to roll. Let me just choke him. Like the choke is right there. Just go for it, And then I started realizing that, man, if I get that collar, there's no escape. It's pretty much a guarantee. So it became a really fun submission too, and just became a guarantee for me, and that I was going to get the finish once I got there. And people in my academy people, my training partners started calling it the Omoplata because, you know, like you don't see anybody doing it, and then, you know, different variations came out of it with like no-gi variations I started doing. So it's a really like unique submission. So I just kind of liked it and just kept going with it.
Yeah, your treatment of the position was really a revelation when we first started seeing it. You know, around the early 2010s. I mean, I came up like Marcelo was a big omoplata guy, Nino Shimbri before him. Eddie Bravo has his whole system with a lot of omoplata. But I think you were the first guy that I saw really playing it as a position, where you had a variety of submission threats and you weren't in a rush to finish. You were just maintaining the position and kept attacking. And you know, for me personally, that really changed the way I played the position and had a lot more success with it after that. So I'm glad you focused on it for the sake of all of us. So, you know, obviously the big thing that one of the big things that came out of the omoplata for you was somebody took a photo and it went viral, and you looked very, very handsome, and that led to a lot of different things. What was that like, having that omoplata photo just blow up and, you know, becoming a jiu-jitsu meme, getting on Good Morning America and all that? Was that like a temporary life change, or did that really change kind of the nature of your business and you know, your life in a long-term way?
Well, it was interesting because that photo was taken in 2012 at a New York Open tournament.
Yeah, it's Ken Permola, right?
Yeah. And that was a really fun event. And I remember when the guy picked me up, I was thinking, man, like, I hope somebody's filming this or taking a picture of this right now, because it's like a pretty cool position, you know, and I'm doing it in the tournament. And the guy, you know, Ken is really strong. He had solid base. I couldn't really bring him down too easily, so I just kind of went up with it. And you know, that kind of thing doesn't happen every day in your training or tournament. So I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool position. And then that was it. I never really thought much of it, you know, and I didn't even see the picture or anything. But then the next year I won the Pan Ams, and I won it like I was the only one that got a submission in all the black belt finals, adult finals. And then there was a little meme that came out about I was actually using that Omoplata crucifix omoplata position in that final match.
Was that Mafra?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Mafra, super tough opponent.
Yeah.
And in the finals there, but I remember that I saw a little meme that came out like that same day, and then the next day somebody said, "Hey, you're on Pinterest with that meme, you know?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw it already." And then they showed it to me, and it was different. You know, it was from the 2012 fight, you know, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, whatever," you know. I didn't really think too much of it. But then later that same day, I think it was like, you know, Monday or Tuesday that week, you know, it was like right after the competition. I got called out by Good Morning America to come to be on their show, and they said, "We want you to fly out." I think they said this afternoon, put you on the flight, you're on the show tomorrow. You know?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I just finished training, and there was like a bunch of messages on my phone, and so I went out with a friend, and you know, went to do that, and you know, I got a lot of attention out of it, which was cool, and a lot of people said this is great because you're bringing jiu-jitsu to the general public, not just the jiu-jitsu public. You're bringing it to like the mainstream, you know, just everyone. And I've had people even say, yeah, I saw that live, you know, I saw that Good Morning America thing live, and people that didn't even do jiu-jitsu. So that was kind of cool. But at the same time, I was still on this high from winning the Pan Ams, you know, and I wanted to like be recognized for that rather than a photo that was taken like a year ago. So, you know, at the same time, like, you're like, oh, it's like a kind of a funny picture, and I looked really relaxed. And, you know, those of us who train jiu-jitsu, we understand what's happening there. But I think the people that saw it and they weren't jiu-jitsu uneducated, they thought I was getting like slammed on my head or something. They thought I was getting lifted up, and which I was, but I was in complete control there. You know? So I think even during the interview, the lady was saying, "So you don't look like you're in a good position right there, but you look so relaxed." And I was like, no, everything was fine. Actually.
No, I'm winning.
Yeah. So like, you know, you should watch the rest of the video, see how it turns out. but it was just a picture, and people found it interesting, and it was kind of a funny picture. But yeah, I got some good attention out of it, and people kind of set me apart as one for the Omoplata, two for the picture and kind of going viral. But I think that's all fine, but I still want to be recognized as more about the technician rather than
Sure.
a funny picture, you know what I mean? But
Now,
either way,
did you have an academy at the time? Did you open your school yet?
Yeah, I was teaching out of a gym at the time, so I was really kind of like not trying to be very aggressive with my teaching. I didn't have my own academy, but later that year, towards the end of the year, I opened my own spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get a lot of people coming in saying like, hey, I saw you in Good Morning America, or I recognize you from the picture, or was it pretty much just like a normal academy, normal students just walking in off the street?
Yeah, that happened. That happened quite a bit, and especially within the jiu-jitsu community, of course, everybody wants to take the same picture.
Sure, I never wouldn't have thought of that, but
today,
yeah.
Even today, I go do a seminar somewhere, and they say, "Hey, take a Omoplata picture with me." So it's kind of funny, but
yeah. And speaking of like what you're known for, most people assume Omoplata guys with the gi, but you've arguably had more success in no-gi with your no-gi Worlds win. How does your game change when the gi isn't involved?
How does the gi
like when you're in no-gi? How does your game change?
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely the guard is a little bit different. I like to play lasso a lot with the gi, and that's not really possible in no-gi. So yeah, I play a little bit more. I play a little different, and I wrestle a lot more in no-gi. I really enjoy wrestling, but I don't do it as much in the gi. And I really like judo, but I feel like we don't really have so much opportunity to use judo in jiu-jitsu because people usually they just want to bring it to the ground as fast as possible. A lot of times, quick guard pull. So my judo didn't really take off as much as I would have liked to because it just goes straight down. But I think no-gi I like to be probably on top a little bit more, but I don't mind being on the bottom either. Whereas for a long time in the gi, I felt better or more strategically successful in the bottom position in the guard. Just put the guy in my guard and either sweep him or submit him from there. Usually I'm going for the submission. But in no-gi, I'm looking the same for submission and sweep, but I want to be on top, and I'm finding a lot more success on top usually.
Yeah, and then with no-gi, arguably your most famous submission was the pretzel plata that you hit. How did that come about? Was that something in the moment you just found, or was that something you just drilled in practice?
It was fairly new for me at the time. Still, it was the first time I ever used it in a competition. I believe it was the first time anyone's ever used it in competition.
I believe so.
I don't think anyone's ever done it, but it's a pretty crazy position. I think it's definitely the most locked up, like twisted position that I've ever found in jiu-jitsu. And because of like the nature of the position where the person just feels completely trapped, it's so dominant and contorting the person's body, into a position where I think the special thing about it is once we're there, I can relax. I'm just like I can take my time. I can look for the submission with, and I usually like to let the person mentally search for an escape. And when they realize they just can't get out, it's like I think about it like an insect falls into a spider web and they try crazy to get out of it. And then they realize that there's just like no hope to get out and they're done, So it just like mentally destroys you, usually at a position you're in an armbar, there's always like a chance of hope until the tap, where this one, even before the tap, way before the tap, they're completely locked up and they're completely twisted up. So that, in its nature, I find it to be special for that reason. But to answer your question, I found it probably about a year before by accident, and it was something that I started looking for more and more in my training. But for no-gi, that would be like the most secure omoplata I could do for sure.
And do you look for that in practice more often?
Yeah, after that especially, I started really looking for it a lot. I found it to be a really interesting, fun position. So yeah, I would look for it. Around that time, I was looking for it quite a bit. And then, yeah, that little clip, you know, it's on YouTube there.
Yep.
Was a pretty cool, like, little way I got into it. And I remember even the coach on the sideline of the guy saying, "You're fine." But I was like pretty determined to finish it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I actually had a knee injury right before that in the fight.
Really?
Before. Yeah, in the semifinal match, my knee popped, and I was going against a guy in the finals there that was really tough. He had beat one of my friends earlier that day, and so I wanted to get revenge for that as well.
Was that the submission you won submission of the year for, or was that a different submission?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, it was the
Okay.
grappling submission of the year. Yeah, so
I'm watching the clip here, and when you finish that, is it finishing? Was the finishing action there more of a neck crank, a spine lock, or was that on the shoulder? Where was it tightest?
most people, unless you have like crazy flexibility in your shoulder, you will feel it in the shoulder first.
Okay.
If you do have crazy flexibility, you may feel it as a choke, or if you tuck your chin, it might get slightly neck. But most people, I think 90% of the population will feel it in their shoulder.
It's the shoulder.
Some people might even feel it in their hip, in their leg, because they don't have the flexibility to even fold that much. When people put me in it, which I hate it, I feel it shooting across my entire leg, like my hamstring, it's a crazy just like twist, you know.
So you know, speaking of people putting you in omoplatas, one thing I'm always curious about with guys who have a lot of success with a system, who own their own academies, is are your students especially good at omoplatas? And is that, do you push them in that direction? Do they naturally do it because, I mean, they're training with Gracie, so why wouldn't they have good omoplata games? Like, how does your specialty in that position express itself with your students?
You know, I'm really like split about that idea, because I'm a big fan of everyone having. I'm really a big fan of having all my students very balanced, and with their jiu-jitsu, like they're good on top, good on bottom. They know how to attack and defend, submission, everything. So I try to teach a very broad jiu-jitsu style, but I've had, like, in the past, especially like the past year or so, people have kind of pushed me in the direction, like, say, like, hey, we really want to learn more like your style. We want to learn like what works good for you, not just like general jiu-jitsu by the book. This is what you need to learn.
Yeah.
And then, because I feel like Jiu-Jitsu Academy is the platform, is like the lab, you know, where everyone's going to create their own style. And I don't think everyone needs to have my style. They're going to have whatever style works best for them. But if they work with my style, I'm going to, you know, be a little maybe more happy, because that's pretty cool. You know, they picked up after me. But I want to give them the environment where they can thrive in whatever direction that's natural for them. But, you know, that being said, you know, like I said, people have been asking to have me teach my speciality more and more. And usually when I go and teach a seminar, then it's a little different. Like, I only really teach stuff that I use, that I do.
Yeah.
But there's certain techniques that I don't really use. I'll teach at my academy that I think they just need to learn it, because, you know, they're going to see it eventually, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So
yeah,
I do a mix.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. My coach has a very good closed guard, and he doesn't really, it's not that he is like everybody must play closed guard, but at the same time, that's a position he knows the details really well, and he can just expand on it endlessly, like what you should do in every possible situation. So a lot of us end up kind of having good closed guards, not because he's trying to make us do it, but just because it's a position he knows really well. So I imagine it's probably similar for you, where there's probably not many questions about how to work in omoplatas that you can't answer for your students.
Yeah, I think probably the same. You know, usually when I see someone that's has the talent for the position, then I start to explore it in a little bit deeper details with them. And because I think, you know, it is actually a pretty hard position to teach. Like if I just get a average room and I start to teach, like especially the more advanced omoplata finishes, I'm usually constantly cringing, like, oh, be careful, oh no, you know, I'm constantly like thinking somebody's gonna get hurt, and super worried about, you know, it's hard. It's easy for me to teach it in a private class setting, but a class, you know, 20 people or more, it's pretty difficult.
Why do you think? Oh, sorry. Why do you think we don't see the omoplata as much compared to like the armbar? Armbar, the triangle. Those three positions. I know when you first start jiu-jitsu, those are usually the first three attacks you learn from closed guard. Why is the omoplata not used as heavily as those other two positions?
Yeah, I don't want to say anything about like other techniques that they're not as complex or anything, but I do believe that, you know, an armbar, you know, as many little details as it has, it's pretty straightforward. You know, even if you have a sloppy armbar, you can still finish it. Chokes as well, you know, you just make those grips. There's a lot of little details and the entries and everything. But the omoplata, I believe, takes a lot more little minor adjustments, and important grips and little movements that that a lot of people overlook or maybe don't have the time, or it just takes more study, I would say, and more time to understand. But for me, that made it fun and made it that people actually come to me asking me about the position, because I believe it's something that I understand better than most. But yeah, it's a lot to understand.
So I'd like to go back to something you were talking about that you started to touch on earlier, which is about teaching the omoplata. So when you're teaching the submission and the position, what do you start with teaching people? What do you really emphasize? Is it entries, control positions? Like what are you going to start with when you do teach the omoplata to people?
Well, it depends on, you know, if the person's like a blue belt or higher, usually I'll ask, let me see how you normally get into omoplata. If I'm teaching a private lesson, or, you know, let's say, you know, something like that where it's more specific, I'll see how they get into it. I'll see if there's anything that I do that they're not doing. And usually there is, and I'll try to add that. If someone doesn't know omoplata at all, then I usually show a very simple variation where I just get their hand to the floor, the leg comes over, and I show how easy it is to get into the position, how easy it can be. Of course, there can be some very intricate, complex ways to like make it a surprise, you know. And for me, those are my favorites. You know, when someone landed in omoplata, they didn't see it coming, you know, at all, and they got completely set up for it and fell into it. Those, I think, is a really fun side of jiu-jitsu for me, when you know, the strategy to get into those positions. So it depends on their level. And
what are the cues you look for to enter into an omoplata? Like what in the position tells you like, yes, now I can go and I'm going to catch this guy?
Basically, all you really need for an omoplata is to have the person's hand under your armpit, under your arm, or to have your your leg under your partner's armpit. You know? So if you realize that all you need to have is to have your leg under your partner's arm, and of course the correct leg under the correct arm, everything else can come together after that, and you can actually find that position in many more situations than you would expect. You know, a lot of people would think it's just going to be from the guard, but you know, a lot of times in scramble, I got this really crazy entry to the omoplata in a super fight that I did in Brazil against Diego Borges in 2013, and I was passing his guard. I had just swept him, and I held on to the lasso, and then he swept me in X guard, and mid sweep I entered the omoplata. But it was so natural for me that I went into it without even thinking about it. If you're looking for that clip, if you look up Copa Podio.
Okay, yeah, I just found it.
Yeah, it's the fight was actually a no time limit match. So they said, you know, if you guys go over an hour, we're gonna stop you and make you keep going later on. It'll be to be continued. But it lasted about 20 minutes, and you know, it was tiring, but I was very cautious with my energy output so that I could save, you know, Omoplata does take a bit of energy a lot of the time, you know, and especially when someone's really trying to get out.
So it seems like, oh, sorry. So it seems like you're advocating for overhooks instead of underhooks. Do you find yourself shying away from underhooks when you're passing at all?
Yeah, I mean, because I know that if you make an underhook on the arm in a pass, or even you just put your hand on the floor, or even looking for hip control through a pass, the omoplata can be there. Not that it's always going to be there. You know, if the person knows how to control the hip in the right way, it can be avoided. But if they're a little bit uneducated on the topic, they can definitely fall into it while thinking they're doing something that's completely safe, the way that they've been taught to do, but with a little bit of adjustment and maybe a little bit of misdirection, or even a little bit of like tricking them to think that they're good, but feeding them into this position. That can be a great way to enter.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really amazing position. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
I can't.
You can't, Clark?
Oh yeah, now I can see.
So this is from the match. This
Yeah,
is really amazing because you're in deep, really over.
X
Yeah,
guard, sweep, and then boom. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Actually,
when you backstep over, it puts you right in that lasso position, just inverted from what you would normally be in guard. That's
this is the part right here where you need to have that energy. Look, he's picking me off the floor.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you have the right grips and you have a little bit of energy left over to really hold on.
Now, when you're working your leg here a little bit, are you trying to shoot your right leg under his far leg?
Yeah, that's actually what's going to happen here if you wait a minute. Yeah, I'm looking for it. He's trying to control it. Eventually here, I'm going to find it right pretty soon here, I think. And then he's going to be forced to either tap or roll. So he rolls. It's going to happen here pretty soon, I think.
The clip's not that much longer, so there you go.
So I think here he goes. He has to roll from it, and then I follow it, and then it just gets worse from there. You know, I get more attached to the upper body. I'm deeper on his torso now, and I'm more behind him. So it's really important for my hips to be behind his hips in omoplata, especially looking for this finish that I'm going to get right here, which is that Clarkoplata crucifix position that you guys. I don't like to call it crucifix too much because crucifix is a different position. It's a position I like a lot too, and it is maybe if you say omoplata crucifix, then it's understandable, but it's not a typical crucifix, right? And actually, for this finish, you don't even need to have the other arm, the far arm. You can have it, but it's not really necessary.
Yeah, I'm noticing you like to hook the back leg. Sorry, the far side leg of your opponents when you're in that position. Do you ever go for the one that's on the opposite side arm that you're not controlling?
Yeah, any hook that you can make is gonna be beneficial. I do go for that one. So if you look in the earlier part of the fight, I did find the hook on that far leg, right?
Yeah.
Which made him roll, and it could have made him tap if he didn't have the instinct to roll. But he had, those cat-like instincts that he just dove forward when he felt the pressure to escape. But I was anticipating that and followed him and just continued to advance there.
Yeah, it's really interesting too. I think as you're rolling, you're already setting up the control, so he won't be able to roll again with your right here. Your left arm's already shooting across, so that you'll be in control when you come up. That's slick. Yeah, because you can see him start to try and walk around, but there's just no way with the arm over the top already. Man, that's a nice submission.
And that entry, I actually had no idea how I got into it until I watched the video later.
It's crazy, man.
No, that's great.
So when you were building this omoplata system, what do you think was the hardest part for what was the hardest technique that took the most time for you to implement?
The hardest problem that I ran into?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's understanding all of your partner's reactions. Maybe understanding, I think to any good position, any good attack, submission, you have to understand in depth everything that your partner can do to escape. And because I believe when you're in a submission, generally you're at least one step ahead of your partner, right? If not more. They have to catch up with you. And as they're trying to catch up, it's important that you can anticipate every move that they're going to do, even by just one step or the way they turn their head. Body positioning is going to tell you, should be able to tell you what they're looking to do next. So by being able to anticipate their next move and prepare to either stop them from doing it or kind of move with it to make sure the position can continue to lead into your favor, that makes a much more complete position and much more dangerous position for your opponent. For me, I think there are a few escapes that are more challenging than others to defend. So I think the hardest part was just that. I mean, there are a lot of good escapes to Omoplata, but most people don't understand the maintenance side of Omoplata as well. So that would be why probably they end up losing it a lot more, or maybe using it as a sweep rather than following through with the submission. You know, so I think it just depends on the person, but just understanding it in depth, because there are so many escapes. You just have to really spend time to understand that.
So, given your very submission-oriented style, do you have you spent much time working on the leg lock game, as that's become a bigger part of the no-gi and submission-only scene? Because it seems like the kind of thing you dig.
Yeah, I do. I do like it. I never really got into like heel hooks, but I really liked knee bars. I have a few knee bar submissions in competition. I think from brown to black belt, I was doing a lot of calf locks. Brown belt, I was doing a lot of calf locks, especially no-gi, knee bars. I've used, I think I've got like 3 foot locks as a black belt in my competition, but pretty simple, you know, like I have a few details that I like to implement, but nothing crazy. And but I just I admire the heel hook stuff, but I just find it so dangerous to train, and I feel bad, you know, because I feel like I'm breaking a twig, you know, like I grab the heel and you start going, and you know, it's you don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But you see the guys that really do it well, they grab it and they go hard. They twist it hard and without much consideration for their opponent. So, yeah, it's something that I haven't really spent enough time understanding. Although I do feel I understand the defense of the position well, which at least I have that. You know, I can't remember ever being heel hooked when I'm really going, you know, really trying hard. So, but, you know, I don't want to, you know, mess up my luck on that, you know, probably.
Yeah. And as an academy owner, what's your policy in the gym? Like, do you allow white belts to do them, or how do you manage that risk?
I think it's really not really correct, or, you know, kind of ugly jiu-jitsu to be going for in a gi. You know, it's I wouldn't recommend going for it in a gi. But going for a no-gi in my academy, I just say, look, for that position, catch and release. You know, you catch it, you hold it, you show that you got it, let it go, keep going. Or, you know, your partner might say, okay, you got it, and then keep going, whatever. But it's not a position that I think that we can really apply like every other position, because unfortunately on that position, you don't feel the damage till it's too late. Whereas if you think about just like an arm bar, for instance, if you just extend your arm fully and try to, on your own, without touching your arm, just extend your arm, you feel pressure on your elbow. Once your arm is extended, you feel that it's in an uncomfortable position. But you think about your knee, when you fully lock out your knee, you don't feel that. You know, this your knee is a much bigger, stronger joint, and I think it can withstand more than we sometimes maybe overestimate what we can do with our knee, you know, and then people get hurt, you know, or it's maybe it doesn't have as many nerves in it. I'm not sure why, but you don't feel it until it's too late. So it becomes a very dangerous position to have white belts doing, you know, and thinking about as a business, you know, one person 10 people, 20 people in your school get hurt over time with people will get hurt, but that's just a position that a lot of people will get hurt more. So I'm not against practicing it, understanding it, of course, but sparring hard with it, I think it's not such a good idea for everyone.
Yeah. Speaking of business, how have you been handling this pandemic we're in the middle of, and do you have plans already to get your academy back open?
I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for what the government is going to say, what my county here in San Diego is going to say about when we can reopen. I don't want to, get in trouble, even though there's a lot of people asking to train again. But then I know there's a lot of people that would say it's irresponsible to reopen the academy even secretly. I've been still going to the academy to do a lot more filming, so that's what I've been focusing my teaching on, and that's kind of what I'm taking away from the pandemic is just getting a lot more time in front of the camera, sharing jiu-jitsu through video. So I've been putting a lot of stuff on my website, on Gracie Allegiance, and in the video section there, and my YouTube channel on Gracie Allegiance. So that's what I've been focusing on during this time, and that's how I'm trying to maintain people's engagement in jiu-jitsu right now, as it's a very tough time for everyone. And unfortunately, jiu-jitsu is usually the last thing that someone who's scared of this pandemic is going to want to do, right? It's like you don't get much closer to anyone by doing jiu-jitsu. So, but I think when we do come back and start, I think one good way to come back is limit ourselves to maybe finding that one training partner that we feel that we'd like to train with, that can commit to the same schedule, or at minimum, when we do come back, just train with one person per day. And I think that could be a good way just to
It's a good idea.
have people feel a little bit more comfortable until, because you get a room full of 20 people or whatever, and everyone's training with everyone, or you're going with 10 different people, or doing position different, specific training. And for what we're dealing with right now in the world, I think that's a really easy way for things like this to spread. So,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
It's a tough time. We got to do what we can, right? But it's a really tough time for business owners because a lot of people are losing their jobs, or they just can't afford to keep paying and not coming, or they just don't want to. So,
it is unfortunate, and wish you the best in weathering it. There will certainly be a lot of academies that don't make it, and it's certainly sad to get on Facebook and see stories from people who aren't able to keep their gyms open because of it. We'll transition into a bit lighter of a topic. So not too long ago, you released Automatic Omoplata on BJJ Fanatics. Not the first DVD you've done, but the most recent one. When you're filming these instructional DVDs, what's kind of your thought process? How, if at all, do you change your instruction because you know that you won't be able to watch the people who are working on it? You know that people are just going to be doing this on their own. Does that change the way that you approach teaching at all?
As far as you're saying, people doing it at home during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, just in general, because when you're in the academy and you teach something, you know that you're going to be able to watch all your students do it immediately after and offer corrections. But when you're filming a DVD, that's not the case, right? People are going to be off doing it on their own, trying to implement these moves in class. Does that change your teaching process at all, or the way you approach showing moves?
Yeah, I think for situations like that, the details are more important. So sometimes you have to spend a little bit more time with the details and just breaking things down a little bit, like, why am I doing what? Because there's going to be a lot of like, what if the guy does this? Why are you doing this? So you're spending more time being a little bit more complete, where I'm noticing like most people tell me that they're more interested in watching instructionals that are only a minute to 2 minute long, which is, I think the majority of people feel that way, including myself usually. But in that type of video, you'll see the technique demonstrated maybe once or twice, get a kind of the general gist of it. But I think for a DVD instructional, this kind of thing, they're investing a little bit more into it. So I believe that they may be going to focus a little bit more of their time than just like a random YouTube video that they come across. So I'll take a little bit more time to spend on the details. And actually, BJJ Fanatics recommended me to have an average time of 5 minutes per technique, which I wasn't sure about what would be the best time limit, but I just went ahead and took their recommendation. Because there are a lot of details. I mean, I did a few techniques that were like 7, maybe even 8 minutes was my longest one. And I've heard that they've had problems in the past, people spending like almost a half an hour talking about one technique, you know, but which I'm sure is possible, pretty easily possible, if you really continue looking at every single, you know, position to area of the position and what can happen. But you know, yeah, so that's probably the biggest change, is just a little bit more focus on the little details.
Okay. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour, and I don't want to take any more of your time, Clark. You've been very, very generous to come on here. So automatic omoplata system on BJJ Fanatics. You will not find a better resource on the nuances of the position. If you're out in San Diego, Clark, is Gracie Allegiance the name of the school?
Yeah, it's the name of the team, the name of the school, but more specifically, the name of the school is just my name, Clark Gracie Academy or Jiu-Jitsu Academy. You can find me on clarkgracie.com, gracieallegiance.com, and always welcome to have any visitors come through. Always looking to welcome a visitor and help someone that wants to learn a little bit more and learn from each other. So just keep spreading our beautiful art.
And then where can everyone find you on social media, like your YouTube, Twitter, Instagram?
So the YouTube that I'm using mostly now and posting the most of videos to is just Gracie Allegiance. And I also have my personal YouTube, which is mostly like my fights and stuff like that. And, you know, Instagram, just my name, Clark Gracie, or Gracie Allegiance is the team. And yeah, just mostly it's just those two for.
Yeah. And then just one more question. If someone wants to watch the definitive Clark Gracie match, which one would you recommend?
Well, I get a lot of people talking about the match that I had with Lapella at the Pan Am finals, where it was kind of like it was like a movie, you know. I was down by 2 points, 30 seconds left, you know. I was gonna lose the match, and then I pulled it off within like less than a minute, and with a submission that no one saw coming. That was kind of a match that drew a lot of attention. I had a really good match with Andre Galvão in 2010 where we tied. I got a lot of people talking to me about that match as well. We fought again another time where I lost in a few points, but the first one was the match that a lot of people said, oh, you could have, if I was the ref, you would have won that fight, you know, because it became a decision. And those are two matches that a lot of people came to me about. But, you know, just I think there's a few highlights that are fun to watch too for Omoplata mostly.
All right. Well, thank you once again for your time, Clark. It's been a pleasure, and I have picked up a few things that I will try when the gyms do eventually reopen. So thank you again. With Matt Joya for thefightsite.com, this is Tommy Elliott signing off.
Thank you guys for having me. See you guys next time.
Hey, thank you so much, Clark. We really appreciate it. Have a good